Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon, adjudicators, timekeeper, my beloved team, and the affirmative team. I am Shariva Eveline Arilia Adnan from Senior High School number 3, Sukabumi, West Java. Well, everyone, deals with our debate motion. This House prefers the strategy of pushing for institutional reform to address police abuse and the misconduct rather than defunding the police. Till today, freshly heard on our ears, I Can't Breathe, another case heard Breonna Taylor, who was killed with the color issues. You know that American police has never been a neutral institution. The first US city police department was a slave patrol, and margin police forces have directed oppression and violence at Black people to enforce Jim Crow, wage the war on drugs, and crack down on protest. When the first speaker said that the government wants to reform is a method to address the police abuse, he doesn't realize that this has been repeated actions by the police. The first speaker of the government also said one way to reform is having more different compositions of the officers. See, the fact that the police has now been in multicultural compositions already, but even so, racism is still happening in their own institution. See Breonna Taylor's case, for example. The first speaker of the affirmative team also stated that the additional camera surveillance are needed. We have enough camera that recorded the brutal actions by the police. We have enough proof to punish the police, but do we have enough willingness to give the victims a justice? Another case dealing with public issues, independent consults is not a guarantee institution that can work well for the people. The institution is related to and will be appointed by the government who is disagree with defunding the reasons of democracy, so we don't believe that this will work independently. Now, my arguments. Even when done right, deals with racism issues, the police function nowadays is known as a means of violence and social control for a country. The police will always be viewed as a problematic agency. We as opposition's team say that defunding the police is not as radical as it may seem at first glance. The context for this call emerged because then police in the US did not stop promoting violence. We can do, for example, proposing citizen empowerment that can reduce crime. The role of the police is maintaining order and security is transferred to people who are able to carry out their duties properly. Without the need for weapons, police budgets can be allocated to improve public services, building central crisis for youth violence or mental health problems, education, and etc., for example. Police departments are historically oppressive and violent. Defunding them could reduce violence against people of color and overall crime. American policing has never been a neutral institution. The first US city police department was a slave patrol, and margin police force have directed oppression and violence at Black people to enforce Jim Crow, wage the war on drugs, and crack down on protests. Police departments are also often outfitted with surplus military equipment, increasing police firepower and the attitude that police are at war with communities, which can escalate situations to violence. Argue that reforms are not wholly intended to change the department for the better, but are an excuse for the departments to maintain power and acquire a bigger budget. reform programs comes with more money and little accountability for police departments continuing historical cycle of oppression. Police are not trained and were not intended to do many of the jobs they perform. Defunding the police allows experts to step in. Police currently deals with calls about mental illness, homelessness, domestic disputes, barking dogs, neighbors playing loud music, and various non-criminal activities. On top of actual violations of law ranging from minor shoplifting by kids to speeding to murder. Defunding the police allows more money to go to community programs and prevents the need for police. Pratik Sharkey, professor at Princeton University, notes when neighborhood organizations engage young people with well-run after-school activities and summer job programs. Those young people jobs programs are dramatically less likely to become involved in violent activities. When street outreach workers intervene, they can be extremely effective in interrupting conflicts before they escalated. When local organizations reclaim abandoned lots and turns them into green spaces, violence falls. When community nonprofits proliferate across a city, that city becomes safer. So, ladies and gentlemen, we still can do many with the funds spent by police now. We can develop more safe environment for the people without spending much money. Thank you so much for watching. That is all from me. And last but not least, wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.